Hello, my friends. Today I want to talk about forgiveness, which is a very challenging but also beautiful topic. Challenging because we're talking about the things that other people have done to us, times they've hurt us, betrayed us, abused us. And there is, of course, a lot of emotional pain connected to those things. Similarly, with things maybe we've done to others, and maybe we're looking to forgive ourselves, there can be a lot of guilt, for example, or shame around some of the things we've done, maybe fear of the consequences. And so we have to tread lightly and compassionately here. On the other hand, the way I'm defining forgiveness is as coming to peace within ourselves around the things people have done to us or things we have done. And that's a really beautiful opportunity, right? And can be really quite life-changing when it comes to certain big things, impactful things that have happened to us. And we're going to get into, in this video, what forgiveness is, how I define it differently. There's kind of a mainstream idea of forgiveness. I don't find it very useful. We're going to go into what a real, true forgiveness is, deeper than words. The key point up front is that, when someone does something to us, it changes our nervous system. It impacts the body. We feel it at the embodied level. If we've been in an abusive relationship, we might be experiencing fear in our body, a lot of the time. And that doesn't just disappear afterwards. If we leave the relationship, that fear stays with us and it becomes a filter through which we see the world. Even in small ways, say you have a friendship and the friend keeps turning up, maybe they turn up late or they keep on forgetting, being inconsiderate in certain small ways, that can build up anger and frustration in you. And if you don't have a way of dealing with that, processing that, it builds up this resentment in the friendship, right? And you can try and forgive them for the small things they've done, but the truth is this resentment is here. And again, it becomes a filter through which you now relate to that person. You can't see them cleanly anymore. And little things they do are going to really bother you a lot because of this build-up of resentment. Or if you've done something to someone else, say you've hurt someone, for a while, you were going through a rough patch and you were being pretty inconsiderate or cruel to some friends. For example, just to take an example, you might notice that later on, and there might be a lot of guilt and shame around that, and it makes you not want to see those friends, even if they've forgiven you. You might, thinking of that time or thinking of those people might bring up those feelings because they're still with you. So this is the thing: the things that happen to us and that we do, they stay with us at the emotional, embodied level, and that's where we also need to go when it comes to forgiveness. Important caveats here before we get into this. If someone's done something to you, this doesn't mean you have to forgive them. Maybe you don't want to. That's totally fine. Equally, nor does it mean that we're saying that what they did is acceptable or condoning it. That's a separate thing. You can forgive someone for something while still being crystal clear that it wasn't acceptable, and maybe you don't even want them in your life anymore. That's a separate decision, just to make that really clear. So let's get into the different kinds of forgiveness. What's commonly understood by forgiveness is almost like a spoken or verbal forgiveness, where you just say the words, "I forgive you." I've decided to forgive that person. We talk about it like a decision, something we can choose to do. I choose to forgive that person. And for me, this doesn't really work so well. I find that it tends to override the truth, the deeper truth of what we really feel. And it tends to come in when we're trying to gloss over those feelings. Maybe we have resentment towards someone for what they did, but we try to gloss over it and to say, "Oh, I forgive them," right? Because we want to keep the relationship smooth and working well, so we just say, "Oh, I'm just going to forgive them." And the reason it doesn't work is because when we choose to forgive in this kind of cognitive or verbal way, it doesn't do anything for those deeper feelings that we were feeling. The hurt we feel if they betrayed us in a certain way, the anger we feel if they have been inconsiderate in a certain way. Maybe the fear, maybe if that person, I don't know, is frequently gets quite angry, maybe we have fear around them. And that verbal forgiveness doesn't shift that in any way. There's no And we try to understand and be compassionate, and that comes from a good place, but there's no insight you can have, there's no understanding you can have or compassion you can bring that can actually heal those emotional wounds that you have. And what I hold to be a deeper form of forgiveness that's more satisfying and feels cleaner is when it comes as a natural byproduct of actually meeting and acknowledging and processing those difficult feelings that were created when they did something to you or when you did something to them. So forgiveness in this sense isn't something you can choose to do, right? It happens by itself. Say you're really resentful at this friend who's been inconsiderate, and there's that resentment, there's that anger, that irritation. It's by actually just acknowledging fully that you're angry and irritated, not lashing out at them, but just within yourself, acknowledge, I'm actually angry. And you can feel it in your chest, naturally letting the anger express, letting it be heard, and, letting it be felt, letting it move, feeling it through your body, really embodying that emotion. And maybe there's some hurt underneath that. Maybe there's a sense that you're not being heard or seen, and that anger was protecting you from that vulnerable hurt. Maybe when you feel that anger, suddenly that hurt comes up, and you realize how hurt you were, how unseen you felt in that moment. And it's similarly by really allowing that hurt, that then there's a relaxation. You feel the rage and the hurt, and then suddenly in that allowing, it relaxes. And the whole mental, cognitive, the stories and narratives you have around that person, I can't believe they did that. And the difficulty, the mind spinning about how they should have done this and they shouldn't have done that, that all starts to relax because it's only being driven by those painful emotions in the body. And then you'll find that, that the forgiveness comes as a natural byproduct. The understanding comes once your own rage has been acknowledged and felt and allowed, and the hurt as well. Then there's way more space for actual understanding and compassion to come through. Because when you embody your emotions, which means when you experience them in the body and allow them, it actually makes you much more cognitively, improves your cognition around understanding another person or situation. It improves your behavior. By repressing our emotions, by trying to forgive at the verbal level, we're pushing all those down, and they actually stay stuck as filters or lenses through which we're experiencing that other person. So we continue to relate to them through that anger and that hurt in this example. Another key point that is why this sort of deeper forgiveness is so important is that we can't really choose how we feel. So if someone is, like I said, someone's being inconsiderate to you, maybe they're being a bit rude, and that annoys you, you can't actually, some people think sometimes, I shouldn't be annoyed here, it's not a big deal, don't worry about it. But the truth is, you don't get to choose whether or not that made you annoyed. Emotions come up by themselves. How you react emotionally to something is not a choice. It just whoosh, that hurt comes up suddenly, or fear comes up, or anger comes up, or shame comes in. And we only have a choice of whether to repress it, push it down, or to acknowledge and allow it and feel it. Maybe a third option would be we can act out. We can let our pain splash out everywhere and lash out at people. That's a third option. Repressing it, I wouldn't recommend. Lashing out, I wouldn't recommend. That leads to more pain for everyone concerned. It's this middle way of allowing the feelings that's going to, really help you out and help other people out too. The corollary of this is what I've been getting at, that you can't really choose if you can't choose how you feel, you can't really choose whether you deeply forgive someone or not. Right? Again, it happens as a natural byproduct, not something that we can choose or make happen. So how do you do this? I have videos on how to feel your feelings, and how to work with resistance to feelings that are going to be very helpful here. I'm not going to go into as much detail there, but you can check out those other videos. But in a nutshell, you want to really honor what I call the truthfulness of your feelings. When I say truthfulness, I mean just the truth of that little part of you. Often our emotions come up, they have a kind of a slightly over the top or toddlerish vibe to them. An angry part comes up and goes, I hate them, I hate them, I hate them. Because someone, turned up late to your birthday party, right? And you're kind of like, whoa, that's a bit out of proportion. But in the moment, it's important to acknowledge that part of you, the truthfulness of it. That's what I mean. it's not the absolute truth that you hate that person because they turned up late to your birthday party. But in that moment, this part of you, this little part of you had that reaction. And it's important to hear that and go, okay, you hate him. You hate this person for turning up late. I get it. So hearing what it wants to say, or maybe there's a shame part of you, something you did, it just goes, oh, I'm the worst person in the world. Right? And you know that's not true at an intellectual level, but you have to really just honor and acknowledge this part of you saying that, and you have to really just let it be heard. Oh, I think this part of me feels like I'm the worst person in the world. Oof. Really let that land. Then after you've heard it, really going into the body and allowing the feeling of it. So you allow the heaviness of the shame in the chest, for example, or you feel that anger and frustration in the belly. It's about allowing these. Maybe there's a bit of movement that wants to come through. The anger wants to clench the fists. The shame maybe wants to just get small and I'm bad. It's about really allowing these parts of you to fully be themselves, say what they want to say, move how they want to move, feel how they want to feel. That's really meeting this part. Here you want to look out for rationalizations that can come in. Often when it comes to things other people have done to us, we have a tendency to like try and minimize it, downplay it, like, oh, it's not a big deal. And in this, we're downplaying, our own emotions here. We're actually disconnecting and disempowering ourselves. And we're only really doing it because we're afraid of the emotions. And that's fine. The emotions they're painful and they're scary and can be very threatening. So it makes a lot of sense. But you're not really honoring the truthfulness of these parts if we kind of downplay them. Similarly, we can try and be very understanding as a kind of rationalization. Oh, they were just trying their best, Again, it tends to be a way, although it sounds very reasonable, it tends to be a way we're just trying to avoid these emotions. And that, there's no problem with that per se, but it blocks us from this beautiful experience of potentially coming to peace, right? Or we have identities that come in the way. It's like, I'm just not an angry person, I'm a very compassionate person. I can't get angry. I can't acknowledge my anger. Or we kind of might get resigned. It's like, oh, there's no point in getting angry at this, but there's no point in acknowledging that I'm angry or that I'm sad. No one's going to listen. It's not going to change anything, because we've had maybe in the past we had experiences when we were young where no one really paid attention to us, right? And that teaches us. I kind of learned helplessness now around our emotions, that we know that our emotions don't seem to make any difference. So what's the point in feeling them? But there is a point. And they are important and they're valid. And it's by feeling the feelings that we actually start to really come to peace. We can also sometimes use our worldview, our beliefs, to just evade these difficult emotions. Maybe saying things like, "Oh, everything happens for a reason." They did that for a reason. It's all part of the divine plan, which I'm not saying it's not true. I don't know. Maybe it is. But we're using it in that moment as a foil to just avoid, acknowledging what's true for us. And if you do this and really allow the feelings, what you'll notice, there is a relaxation that comes in. That anger is integrated and disappears. The shame gets integrated and goes back to where it came from. And so you're no longer carrying it around, and you're no longer seeing the world through this lens. The person who did that painful thing to you, you don't see them through that lens of rage anymore. Or that person, you hurt them maybe, you don't see them through that lens of guilt. So there's a possibility of, you can start to relate to them again. Right? So it feels, true forgiveness feels clean. When you've gone through the body and felt the pain, it feels clean. It feels light. And that's the beauty of it. You get to unburden yourself of these wounds from the past, of things that have happened to you and things that you have done. And that's the opportunity. So I'm going to just take you through a brief exercise now, which will hopefully show you where in the body you might be holding onto a bit of some stuff, right, connected to these things. And we are going to be exploring triggers. So just as a bit of a warning, I'm going to invite you to invite in a mild trigger. So, you can play along, or you can sort of just end the video here. But if you want to play along, let's jump into it. Just take a moment to get comfortable. And dropping out of the mind and starting to come more with your attention into the body. So we're just going to start to connect to what's actually here. Maybe different sensations, tensions, bits of emotion. Just noticing. Then what I'd like you to do is bring to mind someone that you feel resentful around. I'm going to use resentment as our example, but you could take anything else really. So resentful at someone because they've done something, or maybe they haven't done something. They've forgotten you. And just bring to mind that person and maybe the thing that they've done or have forgotten to do that's creating some of that resentment. Yeah, like I said, maybe you want it to be quite a mild trigger. Like I said, someone who let you down in some way. They didn't turn up to your birthday party. They forgot your birthday. And just really feel their energy and feel that situation or moment that makes you feel resentful. And then I'm going to get you to say a sentence out loud and just watch what happens in your body in response. I want you to say to that person out loud, "I forgive you completely." I forgive you completely. And just watch for where there's a no or disagreement in the system. Maybe you start to feel some of that frustration, that resentment in the chest. Or maybe there's some fear that comes in the belly. You're just afraid of actually acknowledging some of your resentment. Maybe some thoughts come. I don't know. But that's, whatever comes up, that's the no to forgiveness, right? That's where the opportunity for deeper forgiveness is. So just gently turn towards that, whatever it is, whether it's some thoughts in the mind, whether it's some tension in the body or an emotion. Just letting it be just as it is. And then we're going to ask it a question. Just put your attention on it and just stay open to whatever arises as you ask it, if you had a voice, what would you say? If you had a voice, what would you say? And that might give you some clue as to what this part of you is wanting to express. And maybe nothing arises, that's fine too. But at this point, maybe you felt tension or anxiety, or you felt, and that's saying something like run away. It doesn't want to forgive because it feels afraid first, and that needs to be honored. Maybe there's the resentment and it says, I can't believe they did that. Then that's what needs to be honored. Now finally, just ask this part of you, is there anything that you need? What do you need from me? And whatever comes up, seeing if you can, maybe this is an opportunity to give it to them. Maybe it's like, I need you to stand up for yourself. Maybe it says, I need you to hold me. Maybe it says, I need a break, I need space. These are all clues as to what these parts of you need to feel complete, to feel held. So now just taking a moment, maybe just support yourself a little bit. You can put a hand on your heart, or maybe sway a little bit, have a little stretch and a wiggle, just to come out of this little exercise, which is very brief, but hopefully just gives you a little idea of what is actually going on inside a little bit deeper. And those parts that came up, that's actually where the opportunity for coming to deeper peace lies. I hope this was helpful. I do work with people one-on-one to support them in this work of feeling their feelings, shadow work, connecting to the body, all of that stuff. So you can check out my details below if that's of interest, and see you later.